Okay, now we're going to start working with the Refine Edge feature, dialog box, whatever it is that you want to call it. And it's not available to us until we actually have an active selection and we have one of these selection tools as our selected tool. So I'm going to come over here and just click on the marquee tool. Although that is not the tool that I use to create this selection. To create this selection, I use the Quick Select tool, and then I zoomed in and used a little bit of adding and subtracting and all that kind of stuff using the freehand lasso tool and all that stuff. We don't need to bore ourselves with that. So here we go. I'm going to click over here on the Refine Edge, and we have the Refine Edge dialog box pops up, and in our document window we see something other than what we were looking at just a second ago. Right now, this, I believe, is showing me my image as an alpha channel. Okay, now alpha channels we'll talk about a little bit later on, but this is what a selection looks like to Photoshop. The white part is the selected portion of the image, and the black part is the unselected or protected area. All right, so now if I come under the View menu here, all right, what I can do is I can click on this, and we can see that we are looking at this as a black and white alpha channel. Okay, I can also choose to see this. Well, let's put that back. All right, click on here. See this against a white background. See it against a black background. It's not a bad way to look at things. All right, especially with this, with all these colors going around the edges here. If I have a black background, it's very contrasty. Then I'll be able to see my edges as they're being created. Okay, so now we could also see our image as an overlay, red rubylith, if you will. This is quick mask mode, and we'll get into quick mask mode in a later lecture when we get into alpha channels. Now, we can also see our image with the marching ants in the background and everything else showing through. Maybe, maybe not. I'm not quite sure if I like doing that one there. And then reveal the layer is just, here we go. This is our image. We'll be able to do and affect change and all that kind of stuff with all the other sliders. We just don't see the marching ants and the outline of where we're going. I'm not a big fan of that one, that's for sure. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over to here, and I'm going to click on Show Me Against a Black Background. Now, over here we have our zoom tool and our hand tool. You don't need to have any explanation on that guy, either one of those two guys whatsoever. All right. I do want to just quickly talk a little bit about this brush tool. This Refine Edge dialog box comes to Photoshop after Adobe got rid of the extract filter. And this is just a very refined, enhanced extract filter that's just got so much more to offer than the original extract filter, and that's why Photoshop or Adobe took it out. A lot of people complained about it, so Adobe made it as a separate download. You can go and install it and all that kind of stuff. But once you understand this guy, you'll see that it is the same, but this one is more powerful. All right, we have some brushes in here, and we have the Refine Radius and a Erase refinements tool. In other words, the edges that we're creating here. All right, there's going to be the radius or the edge that we're creating. We can actually paint more of it in, or we can paint some of it out if the application is a little confused based on the background that it's working with. All right, now that radius I'm talking about, that is visible over here. Now, if I were to click on Show Radius, we don't see a radius at this point in time. And the main reason we don't see a radius at this point in time is because I don't have any value in here. If I put my cursor in there and start hitting the up arrow keys, and I'm at 1.1 pixel radius, now you're starting to see this radius. This is the area that's getting affected when we use this dialog box. All right? Okay, so I'm going to go down that, and then I'm just going to shift up to go into bigger increments, and you can start to see the area that's going to be affected is getting wider and wider and wider. If I were to take this up to 10 or 11, let's go down to 10 just so we have even numbers here, you can see that where the edge is right there between background and subject, we have the same amount of pixels on either side in this radius. Okay, now I can increase this and put this up to 25, and you're going to start to see how that radius is coming in, and if I'm not mistaken, it's going out by 25 and it's coming in by 25. And just as we have the black area out here that's not being considered, with that we also have that center piece here. All right, so it's just the outline that's going on. Now, if I was to turn on the show original, all right, we go back to this, which is what we originally had when we're in this window. Kind of weird, I know. All right, so I kind of like to leave that one off. This guy here, the edge detection, very, very smart choice to choose. You guessed it, Smart Radius. Watch what it does when you come in and choose that. All right, it comes in and it starts to eliminate some of the stuff that it doesn't think you really want anything to do with. And of course, you would naturally reduce this down to get a nice tight area for things to work. But if I brought that all the way up over to here, you could see that we don't really see that much difference in the outside area of our selected thing with this radius thing set to 250. Even if I was at 40, really not that much difference, but you got to see the actual radius that's working on. If I turn off Smart Radius, that's the radius you're working with. All right, it's going from this edge all the way out to there. It's also coming from this edge all the way in. But because the radius value is greater than the depth it can come in, it's kind of negating itself, whatever. All right? Okay, so if I brought this back down to here, you can see that 25.8 without the Smart Radius is got a lot of stuff going on. But I turn that on, and it just starts to crunch it in a little bit. Obviously, I'm going to want to bring this way down, and personally, I think I'm going to stick with about 0.8. I want to keep it nice and tight. All right? If I want to, I can smooth out my edges. I'm not quite sure if showing you the radius is going to be the best way for you to see how the smoothing works. All right? Let me stop just for a second and tell you that with this image and the background I'm selecting it from or extracting it from, I don't need to make any adjustments with this. This brush would be a great tool to use if you had, I don't know, some maybe you wanted to extract a model from the background and she's got lots of flowing hair or whatever it is, and some fine details like that. Maybe that would be the area you'd use this brush. We'll get into that in another lecture later on. But for now, I want to show you the smoothing and the feathering, the contrast, and the shift edge. Shift edge is a little bit of a weird thing. What it's doing, I mean, it is shifting your edge, but what it's doing, it's contracting or expanding. All right? So if I were to turn this off and then come back over to just the alpha channel, all right, come over to here, and if I was to choose to smooth out the edges, you can see how smooth this whole outline has gotten. All right, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just showing you what goes on. And if I really do this, we're really just going to smooth things around. It's kind of looking like a ghost, isn't it? Yeah, too bad it ain't Halloween. All right, feathering, and we know what feathering is going to do. It's going to soften the edges differently than smoothing did because, well, that's too much of a feather. All right, but I'm going to come in here and give it a little bit of a feather, and you can see all of these little ins and outs and nooks and crannies and all that kind of stuff are maintained with the feathering, but they are lost with the smoothing. Okay, and then the contrast, well, let's just see. If I was to crank this all the way over, you can see how crunchy the edges get. And if I was to, take the contrast back down to its norm, fine and dandy. All right. The shifting of the edge is going to contract or expand, so I'm going to contract first, and you can see how it comes in on itself. All right, and then if I choose this one, you can see that it actually expands, and I'm going to put it to 0, and you're going to see it kind of just go back to where it should be. All right, at least for this image, where things should be. All right, now I want to talk about the output section in here. And in order to do that, I think what I want to do is I want to come over to the marching ants section here. All right, this is going to be a little bit fun, I think. I don't know. Let's see. First of all, the decontaminate colors is the little bit of pixel information that is picked up on the outside of your selection based on the anti-aliasing that's turned on when you're using your selection tools. All right, and that's a good thing to have, is that little anti-aliasing thing that's there. All right, but sometimes you do pick up some of that color from the other background. In this case here, it's not really going to make any difference because of what I'm going to do, but I would always want to see if that's going to do something for me, and I'm just going to leave, all right, the default value at 50%. All right, I'm just going to leave that alone. Now, the next thing is, what are we going to do when we output this? All right, do I want to have a new layer created with a layer mask in this document? Do I want to have just a new layer? Do I want to have a new document? Or do I want to have a new document with a layer mask and all that stuff? So let's see what new layer is going to do. So I'm going to choose this. I can always undo. All right, now I haven't got that much done over here because I really haven't played around with a lot of stuff. So, coming out. Beautiful. All right, absolutely fantastic, beautiful. I'm going to undo that. I'm going to come back over to this guy, and I'm going to put this at 0.8 because that's where I was. Actually, I may want to try that remember settings thing. All right. If I were to, well, you can have it as a selection, as a layer mask. There you go. A new layer with the layer mask. Most people go for this. All right, you come in here and you end up with that. All right, what you end up with is your brand new layer, and you have the layer mask. All right, and this layer mask looks identical to the black and white, or what I refer to as an alpha channel, in the dialog box. When you come in and you got this guy turned off, you don't see anything where the the black part is. Shows up as transparency. In Photoshop, if I was to turn this on, well, then you would see right through to that, all that fun stuff. All right, so now what I want to do is, I wanted to show you this, but I also want to have it just as a new layer and not with the layer mask itself. So I need to apply the layer mask to this image. When I apply the layer mask, then all this area in the background where you see black here will appear on this layer as transparency. I'm going to go under the layer menu, and I'm going to come down to layer mask, and I'm going to choose to apply. All right, now that I've applied the layer mask, you can see that it is transparent in the layer itself and showing us the transparent stuff there. All right, what I want to do is I want to create a little collage thing similar to what I did in the handout, the accompanying handout that you have. So first of all, I think what I might want to do is just come over here and call this guy Color Rider. All right, and then I'm going to make a duplicate of this background, or this Color Rider layer, and I'm going to do that by doing a Command J or Control J to make a duplicate. I'm going to grab my move tool, and I'm just going to move the duplicate over to here as an example. All right, now I need to make this guy a little bit smaller, so I'm going to go under the edit menu, and I'm going to choose free transform, get the bounding box up. I'm going to constrain the aspect ratio by holding down the shift key, so that when I drag from the corner inwards, I'm not going to squish or compress my pixels. And I want to do this just about like, probably about like that. I'll accept that transformation. I like that. I might want to move this guy down a little bit. Perfect. Now what I want to do is I want to flip them horizontally, so I'm just going to come under the Edit menu. I'm going to go down to the Transform. I'm going to choose to flip this guy horizontally. Beautiful. All right, now I'm going to turn on the background so I can just see where I have this guy sitting, and he's flying above the air, and over here, flying above the air. Absolutely perfect. The only thing is I want this guy to be grayscale. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just hit my D key to make sure that I have pure black and pure white, and I'm going to come under the Image, Adjustments, and I'm going to come down here and choose Gradient Map. And I'm going to choose Gradient Map just as we have. There's the preview, all right, and it's just going to apply the black and white conversion to this guy. Now I get to call this guy. All right, this is going to be Grayscale Rider. All right, super. All right, now the next thing I need to do or want to do is I want to do something with this background. All right, so I want to have, say, this portion of the rider really large as part of the background, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to fade that to about 30%, and I'm going to put a white slip layer underneath so I can fade the large to about 30% through to the white slip layer. Then we can put motocross across here. We can put down the logo for the motocross park that's going on, and then possibly some text information about the rider. Whatever, you know, you do whatever you want to do when you create these collages and posters and all that kind of stuff. So in order for me to be able to change the scale of the background, I have to unlock it. As you can see, it's a locked background. In order to unlock it, the quickest way is to just double click on it, and you get this new layer dialog box. Basically what it's saying is we're going to make a brand new layer, naming it layer 0, out of the existing locked background. And generally just click OK and move on. Perfect. Now what I want to do is I want to scale this, and as you can tell, I want to scale this quite largely in this window here. So in order for me to be able to do that, I need to reduce the size of my document so I can actually get those handles to be able to scroll properly and all that stuff. So this is what I generally do, is I just zoom out a little bit, and then what I do is I grab this to expand that window and just do something a little bit more. There you go. Beautiful. I'm on that. I'm going to go Edit, Free Transform, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the Shift key to constrain the aspect ratio. I'm also going to hold down the Option key so I can actually scale it to the center. And I'm going to get my guy to go up about this big. I'm going to reposition and put this down to about here. Sure, that looks fine. And do that. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to create that slip layer I mentioned. So there's a number of ways I can do that, but because I know that my background color is pure white, I'm just going to create a brand new blank layer, and I'm going to do the keyboard shortcut on the Macintosh, which is Command Delete, and that would be Control Backspace on the PC to fill that with white. I'm going to drag that below layer 0, click on layer 0, and because I have the Move tool as my currently active tool, I can just hit the number 3 key on the keyboard, and I end up with 30%. All right, now is 30% too much? Is it too little? I don't know. Whatever. And now I can actually just do this to shift over so we can see a little bit more of the rider, right, in the large view, something along those lines, like that. This is starting to look really, really good. Like I said, I can put in the phrase in some really, sexy type, motocross, and then down here the logo and the name of the motocross track that this event was taken part in. I could put the, instead of that, I can put down the rider's name, information, all that kind of stuff. Unlimited, people. Just have some fun. That is Refine Edge.